What are the big questions that you think people have right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having done, business, you and I have done business together and, worked with some of the same clients who actually have moved between markets. I thought it was an interesting thing. That's why I wanted to jump on here with you and kind of discuss some of the similarities, but then also some of the pros and cons to our different areas. Because I think that some of the feedback I've gotten from people who've moved here to Salt Lake is that they were also considering other areas, right? And the areas that kind of keep popping up are going to be like Denver, Colorado, that has a very similar feel to Salt Lake, but then also some of the warmer climates such as Phoenix, Arizona, which is where you're at, right? So a lot of people are kind of considering moving west, whether it's for personal reasons, maybe it's for a job, maybe it's for just a change of scenery. I don't know. Everybody's in a little bit of a different situation, but overall, the thing that I keep noticing is that, Phoenix comes up as an area that a lot of people consider when looking at making a move across state lines. I think a lot of people are probably coming from California. I'm sure you see the same thing. But I also get a lot of people that come from the Northeast. What's your experience been with that? Where are people moving from when they come to Phoenix?
Yeah, I mean, migration's coming from all over. I think we get 20% of the incoming migration tends to be from California, which is a big chunk, but we're getting people from all over the place. And I have plenty of people also reaching out from the East Coast, from, up in Seattle, up in the Oregon area. So we're getting people across the board that are looking to make a change, trying to figure out what makes sense for them. We've obviously seen a lot of changes across the board when people are making moves over the last couple of years because of all the pandemic stuff and everything that went along with that and people being able to work remotely. But we're, even with that going away for the most part, we're still seeing a lot of inbound traffic. And I think, not only just talking about Phoenix versus Salt Lake City in general, but it's like climate versus climate and that type of thing, like why people are moving to warmer weather versus why people might move to a colder weather or, more of a mixed season type of thing. And there's definitely, I've lived in both. I've lived in Colorado. I've lived in Phoenix for a while too, and I like a lot of what both climates have to offer. So it's interesting when people make the decision one way or the other.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed when people make the move here, a lot of people are very interested in the winter weather that we get here. Yep. People want to ski. They want to get outdoors. I've even had a couple of people who ice climb. But the skiing and the snowboarding is the big draw for winter weather here in Salt Lake. It's also just beautiful to see on all the snow on the mountains. But that's what people love. And then you also get the four seasons, which is something that's a little bit lacking in Phoenix. It's kind of like hot and less hot, it seems like. But here in Utah, it's like we're in the middle of February here, and it's cold outside. It's sunny, so it's manageable to be outside. But you get the full winter, a little bit of spring and fall, and then of course you get the warmer summers. Where it's still getting up to 100 degrees on some hot days, but usually in the 90s. Yeah. So I think those are kind of the differences that you see. I mean, I think for you. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like a lot of people, you probably hear the opposite side of that, like, hey, I'm trying to get out of the cold. I'm trying to get out of the rain, the snow. I want warm weather.
Yeah, I think the primary conversations that we have are people coming from colder weather climates that are sick of the freezing temperatures, sick of the winters. And they're like, hey, I can deal with your summers. I know they're not going to be fun, but I'd rather deal with the summers than deal with the snow and the cold weather winters. And I think from a opposite perspective, like why people want to leave Phoenix and go to places like Salt Lake or go to places like Denver is they're sick of the summers and they're sick of the heat and they're sick of some of the same things that Phoenix has to offer. And they're like, get me somewhere that's like a new change of pace that maybe my lifestyle might change. Maybe I can get up on the mountain and go skiing a little bit more, or go snowboarding a little bit more, allow your kids to get outside during the summer. We have the ability to do that during the winter here, which is great. But, when summer comes around, sometimes you look at yourself and you're like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Do you find now, what are the things that people like, if you're like people that are leaving Salt Lake from your perspective, what are they trying to run away from?
Yeah, I think that weather can be one thing. I think that for me, having grown up here, each year that goes by, the winters are a little bit less desirable for me. Just the snow, the cold weather, the darkness throughout, morning and later in the evening. And it just kind of wears on you, I think. I don't know. Some people really like it, especially if you ski or snowboard, you're going to really enjoy it. But generally speaking, yeah, the people that I've talked to who have left are either leaving for a better opportunity. Sometimes it's just there's a better job in another market, or it's going to be weather related, trying to get out of the snow. And I've seen people ironically move to the coast. Sometimes that's the West Coast, sometimes that's the East Coast, or they're going to move south. They're going to go to Arizona, they're going to go to New Mexico, Texas, Florida. They're going to go to the southern states that are much warmer. So that's been the big thing on why people leave here. Funny enough, I mean, having helped hundreds of people move to Salt Lake City, only a handful have left. And for, I think all of them, it was job related. The job that they moved here for didn't end up working out. They ended up moving on and getting another job somewhere else. So, it's not always just like, hey, sometimes it's a climate or whatever. It can be the actual job atmosphere, or opportunity.
Do you find, so one of the things that, and you probably get a lot of comments on your channel. I tend to get a lot of comments on my channel from people that live here that kind of want to hear, some of the content that we're putting out. There are a lot of people that wonder who have lived in Arizona for a long time, lived in Phoenix for a long time. They're like wondering why people are moving here. And they're, or they're upset that people are moving here, that type of thing. Or they're like, why would you move here? Like we have no water. The heat's unbearable. It sucks because of this reason and that reason. But then I talk to obviously the people that are new to being here and they absolutely love it. So I wonder, do you get that same type of feedback from people who've lived in Salt Lake their entire life and are like, why are people moving here versus like the people that moved there and then like, hey, this is the perfect place, is exactly what we were hoping for?
Yeah, I do get a lot of that feedback. The people who have grown up here, I found that a lot of them are kind of bitter about other people moving in. Yeah. We get a little bit of the talk about the water situation. We've got a little bit more than you guys, so we're doing okay, but it's still a big concern. We've got the Great Salt Lake that's kind of drying up right now. Yeah. Me personally, I'm fairly optimistic that one way or another they'll figure something out. They might have to spend a lot of money to do it, but they'll get there eventually. I don't know, maybe call me a blind optimist, but that's kind of my thoughts. But yeah, a lot of the people who are local I think they realize why people move here because of the mountains, the beautiful scenery. It's relatively affordable, especially if you're coming from a more expensive market, such as California, Seattle, Portland, or the Northeast. And people really want to, have that type of lifestyle. They're trying to get out of the big city or something and come to our area. So almost everybody I talk to, when they move here, they're like, yes, this is exactly what I envisioned, exactly what I wanted. I got the house that I wanted at a fair price. And almost everybody's been happy. There's only been a couple of people who have just been unhappy. But like I said, that's more job related. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you find, are there any big surprises that people have that they come to you and they're like, you know what? I didn't realize this when I moved here.
Yeah. I've made a couple of videos about that on my channel, actually, which people can check out. I think it's actually titled "What They Don't Tell You About Salt Lake." Living in Salt Lake. And I did actually survey some of my past clients who had moved here and asked them, hey, what was different? What did you not expect? There was comments. Everybody had a little bit of a different comment about the traffic or about the culture or about, the LDS population or whatever it might be. But the one thing that kind of popped up time and time again was that here in Utah, Salt Lake City specifically, it is very lacking in food choices. There are some pretty decent restaurants out there, but if you're looking for like something that's unique, kind of mom and pop, a little bit higher end, middle to high end, there's not a lot of options, especially in some of the popular areas right now and the newer areas. It's mostly just like franchise chain type stuff, right? It's going to be your typical fast food that you can get anywhere else. And people always comment on that, like, man, where's all the food at? Like you have to go into downtown Salt Lake to really get something that's kind of unique and is high quality. And so, that's something that we've seen time and time again. What about you in your market?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny one, like, because I'm trying to think about that too, like as far as surprises. I tend to think of it from a perspective of like when people are first getting here and they're trying to figure out what areas they want to be. Like, I don't think people understand how spread out it is. And then there's so many similarities to different places, like when people are moving, when you talk about the cities surrounding Phoenix and trying to figure out, hey, do I want to live in the East Valley versus the West Valley? And, is one that much better than the other? And there's so many similarities. And I think, kind of like what you spoke to a second ago, as far as like there's a lot of chains. There's a lot of the same commercial development that, like, if you drove to one city in the East Valley, like you were in Chandler and looking at a strip mall, you could drive up to northwest side of Peoria and look at the same strip mall, and it has the exact same things in it. So you see that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
I do feel like we have a little bit more diversity, probably, maybe because, than what it sounds like you have when it comes to our higher end shopping dining destinations between Phoenix, Scottsdale, and that's spreading out to the other cities.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know if anybody's surprised by the summers, because we're constantly warning people that it's going to be hot. I'm trying to think of it. It's a good one. I'll have to think more about that. Maybe poll my audience as well.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe if you're not coming up with anything, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think that it's, what you say about, Phoenix, where the west side versus the east side, I can definitely see that. I know that Las Vegas is very much the same way, at least for me as kind of an outsider who's visited the city, both Phoenix and Las Vegas, maybe about a dozen times over my life. It does feel that way, where it's, it feels the same. You can see the exact same strip mall and same restaurants on one side of the town. It's the complete opposite. So I think that is something that's a little different here in Salt Lake.
And same with the subdivisions as well.
Yeah. Subdivisions look a lot very similar, right?
Yep.
I think there's probably a little bit more variety on that here in Salt Lake. I mean, if you go north of downtown Salt Lake, it gets, it's kind of more blue collar industrial. There's an Air Force base, so there's a lot of military. And then you go south and it's extremely white collar. It's, lots of business owners, tech workers, administrative stuff, marketing, all that type of, industry. So there's, a little bit more variety there maybe, but just something that's kind of interesting. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, we won't we'll take forever to get to this, because I think it's a hot topic for everything right now, especially on YouTube, is like what the housing markets are looking like. Can you give us kind of your Cliff Notes version of what you think the housing market looks like in Salt Lake right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of across the board, depending on which data set you look at, it's going to be a little bit different, but we saw prices peak out back in about May or June. And then we've seen prices, come down slightly, and then into the fall and winter months, we saw them, drop more substantially. January was actually down quite a bit, mostly due to seasonality, I think, because anybody who was shopping in January was actually or anybody who closed in January was actually shopping and looking in December, right in the middle of the holidays. So, we saw prices kind of drop there. I think we're down, again, depending on which data set you look at and which cities, we're down somewhere between 10 to 15%, which takes us back to the pricing that we saw kind of the end of 2021. I personally believe that we'll probably see prices drop another 3 to 5%. Assuming that interest rates stay where they're at. If interest rates climb, it could push down harder. If interest rates stay flat or even come down, then the market I could actually see start to level off or potentially even climb into the back half. I personally think that interest rates are going to be about what they are right now. I could see them rising slightly, maybe 0.25%, 0.5%, but kind of fluctuating. I think a lot of people are too optimistic about interest rates coming down in the short term. I think everybody was hoping for that. I think it's going to be at least the end of this year before there's any indication of that happening.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of speculation out there, and it is one of the main drivers of what we're going to see in our market, because if interest rates go up, everything's going to come to a halt. If they go down, we'll start to see a little bit more action. I think everything you said I would agree with, and I think is almost exactly the same as what's happening here in Phoenix as far as what the prices have come down from the peak of May 2022 and the craziness and the chaos of what we saw then to what we're seeing now. We had, and we're kind of in the middle of our spring season, which brings a ton of traffic here. We had a Super Bowl here, obviously. We've got spring training coming up. That brings a lot of money into our area and brings a lot of buyers that are like, hey, we're in town and we want to spend money and we want to have a place here. So we're seeing the effects of that right now, but we're still stagnant because there's not a lot of homes out there. Our inventory is so low. And the one thing, and I want to pick your brain on this too, because I think Arizona has a definitely very saturated market when it comes to short-term rentals. I don't know if you guys had a huge amount of investors come into the Salt Lake market or into Utah in general that were, I would imagine there was a lot of them, but we are very saturated on the short-term rental market, and it'll be interesting to see if that inventory will start to hit or turn into listings if people aren't getting them booked.
Yeah, I don't know that I do think we have oversaturation. A lot of people have gone short-term rental because you can make more money. But every time I've looked online, I see a lot of rentals that are just sitting empty, right? The rates are so low that I don't even know how most people are making money unless they bought the house 15 years ago. And I think that's because it's just become a price war. Everybody's trying to undercut the next guy to try and get bookings and keep their place full. And I've looked at it, and I've got rental properties myself, and I just figured, long term is just better. You got the stability of it. You don't have to worry about it. It's much easier. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think actually a lot of people are going to go from short term rentals into long term rentals, and that will put downward pressure on rents actually, as kind of more inventory comes onto the market there. But as far as like inventory for sales, I don't know. I don't see that happening. We're sitting at about 7,000 active listings on my MLS right now. Back in the height of the COVID stuff, for 2022, or let's say 2021 into 2022, we're somewhere between 2,000 to 4,000. So we're definitely up, but still going back to like 2018, 2019, we were sitting somewhere about, roughly hovering around 10,000 listings. So I always look at this and I think, inventory is still down. That's also concerning because over the last 5 years, there's been, who knows, maybe 50,000 houses that have been built across the metro area. So just by the number of houses that are out there, you should see the inventory numbers kind of increase in line with that, right? But it's not happening. Their inventory numbers are still low. There's still a lot of demand. I have probably a dozen and a half, maybe 15 to 20 clients who have contacted me, said, hey, we're looking for a house. We just can't find anything. We don't, there's not much out there to choose from. But if something comes up, these people are jumping into the market and getting after it. They said that here in Salt Lake, I don't know if Phoenix is the same. I'm curious to hear what you say, but here in Salt Lake, in kind of the metro area, they said that we're somewhere between 25 and 30,000 housing units short of what we should be to be at a equilibrium, right? So what do you see in Phoenix with that?
Yeah, I mean, our inventory is like, I'm not sure if Nick from Reventure Consulting does any stuff on Salt Lake City, but he's constantly out there talking about how Phoenix is a crash market and that type of thing. And I think his last video was like, our inventory has skyrocketed and it's up, almost 200% from where it was last year. Well, it's like, yeah, but it was like nothing last year. Like, of course it's up 200% because it was zero before. Like, and so we're still at this point right now where we're, at probably 40% of normal of actual homes on the market. So we still just have this like very low level of inventory. What I tend to tell the people that are reaching out to me when they're looking, it's like, look, we have probably a split, and this is a random number I throw out, but I think it tells a good story. It's like we have like an 80-20 split. We have 80% of the market of the houses on the market that are overpriced, and a lot of them are just junk houses or just they need to come down. And then 20% of the market is like what everybody wants, and they're still getting multiple offers or getting, record pricing. And so you mix those two together, and of course you're going to see numbers coming down, but it doesn't tell the real story because it doesn't tell you how the 80% need to come down more, and it doesn't tell you the other 20% are actually not going to come down. So it really kind of confuses people when they're trying to go out and look around for homes, because then they're like, well, I think the market's down and it's more of a buyer's market, so I should be able to get a deal on something. It's like, well, it depends on the house. So it's a crazy one.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a lot of content creators here on YouTube that like to talk about all the doom and gloom, and you have to kind of keep that in the back of your mind and take it with a grain of salt. That the reason why is because it gets clicks, right? They're getting views and they're getting paid for those views. I don't think a lot of people realize that, is that these YouTube people are making, in some circumstances, a lot of money off of the views that they're getting, right? If you're getting 500,000, 1 million views per video, you're going to be pulling in a pretty decent income from that, right? And so like it or not, whether they tell you a different story, they're going to be incentivized to, do something that gets clicks. And oftentimes that's like, hey, look, the market's crashing, it's going down, blah, blah, blah. I've been hearing people say that since April, May. Yes, the market has come down, 10 to 15% in our market, but people were projecting, oh, it's going to go down 30%, 40%, 50%. And I'm not seeing it. I'm not buying it. For me as a real estate agent, I'm going to have business either way. So I'm not incentivized to, of course I make more money if I, sell homes, but for me, I'm like, I don't care if prices are down or up. That's not what's important to me. As long as the market continues to move, just from my own personal, business, that's what matters to me. So I have no hesitancy saying, hey, look, the market's way up, or hey, look, the market's going down. Here's what I think is going to happen. The next guy's going to say something completely different. And you have to take both opinions and then make your own opinion.
Yeah, and I think, the big difference for us too is like we're out here building relationships. Our goal of putting out the content that we do is to provide value and hopefully build relationships. And then people reach out to us, and we have calls like this. We get on a Zoom call. We get to know about you. We get to know about your family situation, what's going on, and we can have a period of 6 to 12 months where we're building a relationship with people, where we're trying to guide you in the right direction as far as should or should you not spend a large amount of money on a big decision in your lifetime. Those relationships matter to us. And so, yes, do we make money if you buy a house? Of course. But for the people that are just putting out content and saying, hey, realtors only have their interest in mind because they just want to make money selling you a house. It's like, okay, well, you guys are making a lot of money and you have no relationship involved. You're not building any relationship with anybody. So I find it a little humorous that they're constantly calling. And look, I'll be the first one to tell you that there are a lot of agents that I don't necessarily find as like are helpful to people, but I don't know. It's a funny way to paint our industry when they're putting out content they are.
Yeah. I always tell people, look, hey, everybody's in a different situation. I'm going to give you the information that you need. If you like that information and if it makes sense for you, and you then come to the conclusion, hey, I need to sell a house, I need to buy a house, I would love to help you through that process. If you decide, hey, now's not the time, I need to wait 6 months, 12 months, or maybe never, that's okay too.
Yep.
Everybody's in a different spot. And, it's the same thing with like, I don't know, you could say this about any industry, which I think is kind of frustrating for us as agents. You could say this about a lawyer. Of course, a lawyer's incentivized to take your case and, tell you that stuff, but you really kind of have to like get different opinions, take the information that you get, and then go out there and make your own decision on whether or not it's the right decision for you. So,
yep. No, I get it. We'll bring it back because I know we could get off on a tangent on all these market videos and stuff like that. But bring it back into kind of you're talking about Phoenix versus Salt Lake, or even Arizona versus Utah in general. Are there any misconceptions you find that people come in with, or we talked about surprises. Are there any? I'm trying to think of another way to kind of educate people on what they need to know before they make a move.
Yeah, this is a good one. I mean, this is one that I get a lot. It's a touchy subject, but very specific to Salt Lake City, and that would be the Mormon culture. Obviously Salt Lake City is kind of the headquarters to the Mormon Church, and a good portion of the population is, falls under that religion and practices that religion. So that's something that we, people have a lot of questions about. I'd say almost every single person I talk to at some point along the way asks a question about it, just kind of like, hey, what do I need to know? And I think a lot of people are a little bit apprehensive about it, which I think is fair. Sure. But once they get here, they realize, oh, wait, like you barely even notice it. Yes, it is a big part. You're going to see people going to church on Sunday and doing the whole thing, and people in church clothes and nice suits and stuff. But for your average person, it's not going to really affect you. I mean, having grown up here, if you focus on it, you're going to notice it, but it doesn't really need to affect your life. And I think a lot of people come to realize that once they live here. A lot of people even say, hey, look, I've got neighbors who are, part of the Mormon Church, and they're great. They're nice. They're kind. They keep their stuff clean. They're friendly most times, right? You always get a few bad apples, but, for the most part, people are like, yeah, they're great. Like we're friendly neighbors, and they keep an eye on my house, and I do the same in return. And whether you're part of the religion or not, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. To me, it's all about just being a good person. And I think a lot of people come to realize that after having lived here. And that really does vary based on the area that you're at, right? If you're in, believe it or not, even though downtown Salt Lake is kind of the headquarters, the population in downtown Salt Lake that's LDS is actually only about 20%. So it's actually pretty low. Sorry, little camera reset there.
Yeah, no worries.
So yeah, it resets every 20 minutes or so. I don't know why, but anyway, it's only about 20% in downtown, but then there are going to be other suburbs that can be 70 or 80% LDS population. So it really varies on where you're at, and that's something that I just try to stick to the facts. When somebody asks me, I say, hey, here's kind of the facts around this. I might throw in a little bit of my own personal opinion. I try to avoid that just because it can be touchy. Yeah. But yeah, that's the biggest one I see here in Salt Lake. What about in Phoenix?
Well, and I actually, a couple things here, because I wanted to say that, we're in a similar situation because we have, I think, a pretty large LDS base between like Gilbert and Mesa. And so, that's a huge part of people making decisions out here. But like you said, it's like you go there and I don't think anybody has any concerns or is like, hey, I'm worried about who's next door to me. Like, the LDS community is one of the nicest communities I've ever come across. So I know they are very good at like working together and spending time together as a community, but I've never had an issue with them. But what I wanted to, because one of my misconceptions potentially, and what I remember talking about, and sometimes you hear about this stuff of like when teams are like sports teams are traveling into Utah, like is there differences on like when like what the bars are closing at night or being able to, when you can purchase alcohol? Those are the things that I haven't talked about this in a long time. So I figured I might as well bring it up. Those are the things that I remember about Utah, potentially got to remember before you go there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's going to be little nuances that come up. And for some people, it's like, I mean, if you're like a heavy drinker or you like to drink, then of course it may affect you. But if I think for your average person, you're not even really going to notice it. They used to be
Cody,
really
there's
strict.
A lot of heavy drinkers out there.
There are. Yeah, there are.
I used to be one of them.
Well, yeah, I think if you're like, if that's part of it, if that's part of your lifestyle, then sure, you may notice it. But yeah, one thing I noticed that actually used to be a thing was they used to have what's called the Zion curtain, which is where if you went to a bar, you went to a restaurant or something, they weren't allowed to make drinks in front of you. They had to do it behind a closed wall so that people couldn't see the process of that. They've since gotten rid of that. So that's no longer a thing. Of course, they've got bars, they've got restaurants where they can make drinks with just like they would in any other place.
I didn't know that. That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, I think they got rid of that maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago. Yeah. But I remember as a kid, that was something that people talked about. But I mean, yeah, I think there's rules. If you go to like a restaurant or a bar, you can't order alcohol until like 11 a.m. or something. Yeah. If you go to,
most people in Arizona couldn't survive that.
Yeah, it's going to be different, right? Yeah. And they also close early. Here in Utah, it's very much a cultural thing. The restaurants close early by like 9 o'clock. Sometimes 10 o'clock, even on the weekends. It's turning into a ghost town. People, if you go downtown Salt Lake, there's still nightlife. Those will be open till midnight, 1, 2, 3 in the morning. But especially in the suburbs, it gets pretty quiet around 9 o'clock. There's not much there that's happening. And then the other big surprise is that in grocery stores here in Utah, like grocery stores, convenience stores, anything like that, you're actually not able to buy any liquor or wine. So if you're looking for liquor or wine, you have to go to a state approved or state run liquor store. So all the liquor stores here are run by the state, which is good and bad for different reasons. But that's something that, people are like, they're like so shocked that you can't just like go buy a bottle of wine when you're at Costco.
Well, and even because that reminded me of like going to Colorado they might even change this rule since I've been there, but the 3.2 beer, because you could only have 3.2 in the grocery stores. Otherwise you had to go to the liquor stores.
Yeah. And I think that's alcohol by weight. Is that right? Or volume? I don't remember, but
I think it's alcohol by volume.
By volume? Okay, so they did change that. So now Utah's on par with the rest of the country. Most of the rest of the country, I think there's still 1 or 2 states that are a little bit lower. But yeah, Utah's on par. So we can go up to 5%, which is alcohol by volume or weight. I don't remember which one it is. I know they're a little different, but we're at 5%, which is kind of standard for, I think, a lot of states. After that.
No IPAs at your grocery store.
Yeah, just weak ones. Yeah, if you want higher point beer, you have to go to the liquor store.
Gotcha.
Anything over 5%.
Yeah.
So
yeah, we've got Arizona. You can get anything you want at any time of the day. So I guess for us people that have a cocktail or two, I guess that's a small advantage.
yeah. I mean, again, I think it's something that's an adjustment. Sure, if you're buying a lot of drinks and whatever, it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment to have some of those restrictions. But once you get used to it, it's kind of just like, the liquor store is going to be closed on Sunday, and it's going to be busy on Christmas Eve, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. I'm sure the smart people can adjust, and
absolutely.
The rest of us, I guess, we'll just have to stay home.
Yeah, just stay home in the safety of your home.
What are some other? What are we missing? There's a lot of cool stuff to cover. I don't want to completely start boring everybody, but is there anything that we've missed that would be, I think, a fun thing to bring up, or just something that's really important? Anything that you can think of?
I think that for the viewers if you're still watching in the video this far, you probably are looking for information either about Phoenix, you're looking for information about Salt Lake, and there's probably a good chance that you're either moving between those two markets, or you're coming in from out of state from another market into Salt Lake or Phoenix. You're kind of determining, hey, if it's the right fit or not. I think the big thing is just, consider weather, weather and climate. That's obviously going to be one big thing. Housing markets are actually, I think, fairly close to each other. Like prices and stuff, Phoenix and Salt Lake are fairly close. Yeah. It's not going to be like this drastic change. So that's pretty similar. I think cost of living is also pretty similar. It's just going to be kind of, some cultural differences, and it just depends on what type of lifestyle you're looking for. That's a big one.
Well, again, it reminded me as a potential difference, and I think it's important. It's something that's always a sensitive subject for people, but I think when I'm having the conversations, and you might be having the same conversations as well, there's a lot of politics. There's a lot of people coming in from other states that are tired of certain things, and especially when you can always talk about what's going on in California and all the junk that they're dealing with, and people being overly taxed, and some lawlessness and that. So, yeah. Do you find anybody who are moving out of political reasons? Because here in Arizona, I actually really do like the balance. I as a non-political person, I like that we're a purple state, and I will vote for both candidates and whoever's better. I don't vote on party, so I like that from Arizona's perspective. Do you find anything that sure. People like about Utah for that reason?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people, like you said, I've talked to a lot of people who are escaping their state because of political shortcomings, at least in their own perspective, their mind. And they're coming to Utah, and they appreciate, the way that things are run a little bit differently here. I think there's a lot of misconceptions around the local population believes that every single person moving into the state is just this crazy radical. And I don't know that that's exactly true. I think that a lot of people actually kind of support more of the red leaning ideology. Yep. And people kind of appreciate that. That is a big reason why people move here. It's the same reason why people move to Texas or Florida, or, yep. If you're leaning the other direction, you go to New York, you go to California, you go to Portland, right? Or sure. whatever it is. So, yep. There's always going to be people moving around for that. We do see that the politics plays into it, especially around just like the homelessness, crime, the public education system. A lot of people are kind of just fed up with that. Especially the ones who are coming from California, and they're just looking for something different.
Yep. No, it makes sense. And especially I think when you're as a father of two young daughters, and I was a late bloomer, but you kind of changes your perspective, and it really starts to open your mind about like what you really want, not only for yourself, because when I know my days before, I just was a little bit short-minded and maybe just didn't think in an overall sense of the what needs to be done or what's important. And now when you have kids, it kind of changes for me a little bit. I'm not sure if you have kids yet or not, but yeah. Do you?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I've got 2 little boys.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm in the same boat. You know, when it's yourself as an adult, you can kind of think for yourself and do your own thing. But then once you have kids, you have to bring them into the equation and really consider their future and kind of,
Yeah.
figure out how you want them to be raised and also the values, that you want them to have. So absolutely, yeah. People with kids. I mean, Utah's known for being. Utah actually has the highest family size in the country, at least on a state basis, which just means lots of kids, right? There's lots of kids here. It's very kid friendly. The public school system is very, I don't want to say controversial, but it's a big part of the lifestyle here. And, it plays a big role.
So with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and don't forget to check out the newsletter in the description box down below. We send out a weekly newsletter to keep you up to date on what's happening in Utah. We've been getting a ton of great feedback on that. So if you'd love to be a part of it, make sure to sign up. And also don't forget to reach out to me, call, text, or email anytime if you want to get information on what it's like to live, work, eat, sleep, and play here along the Wasatch Front. Then you got to get in touch with me. I've had people from all across the world reach out, and I cannot wait to hear from you as well. If you're looking to buy or sell real estate, I want to be your trusted real estate resource. With that said, guys, thanks for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.